Now people have asked me, why did I name the book Karachi Halwa? Now rather than tell you about it, I would like to have your permission to read the prologue which explains the title. To read some extracts from the book which will give you a flavor of what the book is all about. So now with your permission, I would like to read to you the prologue of the book. Incidentally, my wife, who's not here, she's in California with our children, has done the sketches. There is a sketch before each chapter, which is a teaser. It's a teaser because it relates to something in the chapter. Not everything. For instance, of course, this relates to the chapter. You have General Zia's caricature, and the title below is "Even the toothy smile could not conceal," etc., etc. It's a book, I think, with a little difference because it's a serious book, but I have tried to write it in a manner that everybody can try and enjoy. So, with your permission, the prologue. It was the second half of 1981, and my tenure as second secretary at the Indian Embassy in Cairo was coming to an end. The 3.5 years that I had spent in the Egyptian capital were a highly rewarding experience for a debutante in the complex world of international diplomacy. Soon after my arrival in Cairo, Egypt and Israel had signed the Camp David Accords in September 1978, which paved the way for the peace treaty signed in March 1979. In recognition of this momentous achievement, President Sadat and Prime Minister Begin were jointly awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for that year. In his acceptance speech, Sadat had said, "Let us put an end to wars. Let us shape life on the basis of solid equity and truth." If you've got the books, you can try and follow it from there. This peace treaty ended the state of war that had existed between Egypt and Israel since 1948. It made Egypt the first Arab country to recognize Israel, but for the same reason, it became unpopular in most of the other Arab countries. In their view, Sadat had betrayed the concept of Arab unity, and Egypt was suspended from the Arab League in 1979. In short, it was a period of hectic diplomatic activity. I was on my toes all the time, trying to cope with the tasks assigned to me. As a result, I was now looking for a good break. It was no secret to my colleagues at the embassy that I was sure that I would soon be winging my way towards Europe or America for my next posting. I started daydreaming about all those wonderful places I might be headed to. On one such day, a colleague walked into my office with a broad grin on his face and a telex message in his hand. "Great news," he proclaimed. Trembling with excitement, I asked him, "Washington? London?" His grin was so broad that I was sure it had to be one of these. He handed me the telex. In those days, emails or even fax messages had not yet arrived on the scene, and all good and bad tidings were sent by the External Affairs Ministry by telex. "Karachi?" I screamed in disbelief, while his grin grew even broader. Not even in my wildest nightmares had I seen myself being packed off to Karachi from Cairo. I had every reason to believe that the Pakistanis would be hostile to me. Our two countries had fought wars in 1948, 1965, and 1971 respectively. And in the last amongst these, we had achieved a decisive victory that resulted in the creation of Bangladesh. I was miserable at the thought of being sent off on a posting to a country where I was sure to be regarded as an enemy. I stayed in Cairo for a few weeks more, agonizing each day about how fate had dealt me such a cruel blow. I was so dejected that I would well have sat down to write my own obituary. There was, however, nothing else I could do about it. Omar Khayyam's famous verse would often come to my mind. "The moving finger writes, and having writ moves on. Nor all thy piety nor wit can lure it back to cancel half a line, nor all thy tears wash out a word of it." While briefly in Delhi, en route from Cairo to Karachi, I received a message from Additional Secretary S.K. Singh asking me to see him. It was his moving finger that had decided to send me to Karachi, for he was the all-powerful head of administration at the Ministry of External Affairs. Some years later, he would become the Foreign Secretary and move his finger with even greater authority to decide the fate of his colleagues, including the most senior ones. "We are sending you to a challenging assignment," he told me. I interpreted this to mean that it was an assignment for which there were no takers. Throughout our meeting, it was quite evident that he was just trying to cheer me up and boost my morale. We had a chat about Karachi and the tasks for the consulate. In a lighter way, he remarked, "I love Karachi Halwa. It is delicious, though it often gives me indigestion." Halwa is an Arabic word meaning a dessert or sweet that is generally flour or nut-based. The dessert itself has been adopted by many cuisines, which have introduced their own variations, and halwa is now part of the lexicon of many languages. The Indian subcontinent is home to many different types of halwa, too, but Karachi halwa is a highly regarded and well-liked speciality. Though I embarked on my stint in Karachi with little enthusiasm, the 3.5 years I spent there turned out to be unforgettable in several respects and fill me with nostalgia even today after the passage of 3 decades. My diplomatic career has taken me to several continents, but I must admit that in no other country did I feel such an overpowering sense of a common heritage as I did in Pakistan. In both countries, the issues in focus are those that divide us. This is of course unfortunate, since present-day India and Pakistan have existed under similar influences for millennia and have remarkable similarities in a number of areas, such as language, literature, art, and architecture. I found that there was something rather unique about the experience of living amidst my colonial cousins. The warmth and affection that I sometimes received there remain etched in my memory. One occasion that I remember fondly was when I wanted to buy a camel skin lamp and found a shop that had just what I wanted. As I was paying the bill, the elderly shopkeeper somehow figured out that I was from India and asked me which city I hailed from. When I told him that I was from Allahabad, he refused to take any money from me, as his wife was also from there. Finally, he agreed to let me pay as long as I would accept 2 lamps for the price of 1. During my stay in Karachi, I met several people who were the very embodiment of sophistication and refinement. Remnants of the legendary Nawabi era, they were a charming blend of wealth and culture, poignant reminders of an age fast receding into the past. There were also many enchanting evenings I spent at spellbinding concerts of Pakistani maestros or at mushairas, graced by the participation of renowned Pakistani poets. I felt truly enriched by such cultural fiestas. Then there were those equally enjoyable evenings that I spent just relaxing in the company of a few close Pakistani friends. Such occasions gave me the opportunity to savor the best of Karachi humor, always original, though at times somewhat cynical. These and many other memories fill me with sweetness even today. On the other hand, I would often witness to the unabashed lying and duplicity that Pakistani leaders have developed into a fine art. Their pronouncements were often at such variance with ground realities that they were difficult to digest. My posting in Pakistan turned out to be so much like Karachi Halwa.